Hi there. I am Karina Holosko. I am the editor of the COVID Rebels 2021. And I am sitting here with the very, very talented Irvin Sam Schonfeld. And Irvin's going to grace us with his presence today. Irvin has an interesting story. He grew up, he's like a historic author. And he grew up in the Glenwood Houses, which is a housing project in Flatwood, Brooklyn. And this was Flatlands, Brooklyn, excuse me. Flatlands, Brooklyn. And this was a time where New York City was still wild. There were swamps and there were...
the neighborhood was wild, not the rest of the city.
The neighborhood. So it was a small area, very wild, around a very big city. Yeah, pretty much undeveloped. Nobody wanted to develop there.
Not yet.
Not yet, okay. So Irvin grew up there in the 1950s. He went on to become a math teacher. Then he became a PhD in psychology, and he has written over 100 academic papers. So he's like really, really smart. And this compilation of short stories or stories that he writes is about growing up in that area with his friends. It's a coming of age story. They're boys without supervision, and they're inventive, and they're clever, and they're full of imagination, playing basketball and baseball and chasing snakes in the fields. So Irvin, could you please tell me how you came about to be a writer?
Well, I have to write papers for scientific journals, so I've been writing papers and commentaries for those journals and book chapters as well. I wrote 2 books. One book was a kind of how-to book to prepare for the psychology licensing exam, and the other was a book on work, stress, and health, which was a more academic book. But I got the writing bug, and I managed to publish 2 short stories. And I joined the NWU a few years back, and I learned about the open mic that the NWU ran at the Muhlenberg Library. I used to attend that, and when the pandemic struck, the open mic closed down for a few months and eventually reemerged online, and I joined the open mic online, where I get to read and edit what I want to read before the open mic. It's very helpful in terms of smoothing out the prose and making the prose better.
Absolutely, and you do get better every single time. You know, on the New York Times bestseller list, that's where this is going to be. Listen, Irvin, I'm kind of interested in the fact that your focus, and you pick a very specific part of life, and what is the focus of that and why?
Well, the focus of it is the following. I had a relatively happy childhood, like a lot of writers, and it was unusual because it was in a housing project, and in the popular mind, housing projects tend to scare people. But that wasn't my case, although I have to say there were some scary episodes. But mostly it was a great place to live. You walked outside the door and there were 100 kids to play with, and the games were manifold. There were races and punchball and baseball and softball and football. And it was just an amazing place to grow up. And of course, there was no traffic inside the project. So, you know, we took over the walks and the grasses.
And this, go ahead.
Oh, let me add one more thing. Anyway, the neighborhood changed dramatically. All the meadows and swamps where we used to explore and play football and baseball were developed away. And I wanted to preserve the memory of that time and place. And I thought the best way to preserve it would be to write a book about growing up in that period.
And it's very important historically, because New York can change from one year to the next. You walk down a street, you come for a visit, and the street no longer exists. It's a real shame. And thank goodness for you capturing that, because otherwise it's documented. Tell me about the age group that you chose to explore.
Well, I explore essentially birth to the end of high school. And that includes the transition when all that vacant land was developed away.
Wow. And you said you did a lot of research too.
Yeah, I read quite a few works on the history of Kings County in Brooklyn, and I interviewed quite a few people, and I have a pretty good memory. And I've talked to my parents about what it was like for them when they were younger, and was able to include some material on how my parents eventually met and decided to move to the Glenwood projects.
And what would you tell people who are starting to write or thinking to write, maybe after careers like yourself? And what advice could you give?
Oh, I think the most important piece of advice is to write about something you love or something you're highly interested in. I think that's the best way to start. And secondarily, I would say it would be good to have a little circle of people who read the material you write and critique it and without pulling punches
Mhm.
and telling you what they think is right and what they think is misguided. I think that's very important. Of course, you need a thick skin, but it makes the writing better.
Oh, wow. Thank you very much. Now, Irvin is going to read something for us. Irvin, what are you going to read for us today?
The name of this section from my book is called Stickball.
Stickball. And that was written when?
Well, it's written and edited and re-edited and re-edited.
I get you. Okay, we're having a little, I'm
All
having
the
a little
story are
problem.
like,
There you go. I was having a little problem with your
okay,
visual. Okay, you're back.
okay,
All right,
okay.
take it away.
So if we were shorthanded for softball, or if we didn't feel like trekking all the way to Prospect Park, we always had stickball. We loved the game. It took skill to hit a Spalding with a bat that was almost as thin as a broomstick. Marty often organized stickball games on the hottest, muggiest summer days. We would take batting practice, then choose up sides. In the game we played against the wall behind 5721 and 5715, Marty drew a chalk strike zone against the side of the building and pitched for one side. Harold pitched for the other team. I was on Harold's team. His deceptive changeups made his fastballs look faster. Harold wasn't a flamethrower, but at certain moments in a game, he could put mustard on his fastball. The slow changeups affected the hitter's thinking. All of us could hit fastballs, but Harold's fastball seemed faster when he threw the pitch after a changeup and located it near the hitter's chest, brushing him back. But sometimes catching the inside corner of the plate for a strike. Harold's inside fastball set up a curveball that broke outside to a righty after causing the batter to strike out, or often causing the batter to strike out swinging. When Harold's curveball was breaking well, Harold was tough to hit. The game was tense, a pitcher's duel. The score was 1-1 going into the top of the eighth inning. Mike was in the batter's box. Steve was on deck. I was in the outfield. The sequence of his pitches. Whoops, I lost it.
I know we're having a little trouble
Okay.
with the video. That's okay.
Okay. No, I
Send a
got it.
little
I
back.
got it.
Yeah.
Okay. So Harold mixed up the sequence of his pitches, a curveball, fastball, changeup. Mike anticipated that Harold would throw a changeup after delivering a fastball. Mike recognized that Harold deftly used one pitch to make the next pitch difficult to hit. Mike knew what was coming. Harold threw a nice, juicy lollipop of a changeup that looked a little slower than his usual changeup. The slowness, oops, I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
The slowness of this kind of pitch could sometimes make it harder to hit than a fastball, but Mike was ready. He swung violently at the pitch, which he should have clobbered for extra bases. However, he fouled the pitch off his body. In frustration, Mike threw the stickball bat hard into the dirt. The bat landed at an awkward angle, splitting in two. A jagged edge of one of the broken halves ricocheted back at Mike,
Oh God.
piercing the center of his forehead.
Oh
He
God.
screamed. Blood gushed from what
Oh.
looked like a fountain spurting above and between his eyes. We took him upstairs to his apartment and his dad, Harry, put a compress on the wound. Mike's dad managed to stanch the bleeding. Harry then called his family doctor to get help. The doc suggested that Harry take Mike to a surgeon. In that era, general surgeons often had offices a patient could visit the day you called. You didn't have to go to the emergency room. After making an appointment, Harry drove Mike to the surgeon's office. The gray-haired doc, a stocky, gruff, old army surgeon, looked carefully at Mike's forehead with a powerful magnifying glass. Speaking to Harry, the doctor said, "There's a chunk of wood in there that must come out. Otherwise, there's going to be an infection. The best thing is that we do it now. It's going to leave a scar, but he's a boy. It doesn't matter. Consider it a wound." The surgeon lay Mike on a table. He told Harry, "Hold him down." "Huh?" "Yeah, hold him down. I think I can get the splintered wood out in a second. You don't want to start a whole thing with anesthesia. Mr. Schmidt, hold your son down." The surgeon then told Mike, "Son, it's going to be painful." The surgeon put something like an eraser between Mike's teeth. "Bite on this." Then he took a scalpel. He waved the knife in front of Mike's face. Then in a swooping gesture, the surgeon went in, whoom, whoom. It hurt like hell. Mike was screaming, and then it was over. Harold and I visited Mike later in the day. Harold felt badly about the accident and blamed himself for the mishap. He asked Mike, "Are you angry with me?" "No, of course not. I'm responsible for all the damage." You inside Mike's building talking about a friend. Mike's a stand-up guy. I couldn't agree more. We thought even more highly of him that day than ever before.
Oh, wow. That was very beautiful. Beautiful. How can we get in touch with you? How can your fans get in touch with you, Irvin?
Well, I have an email. I have a profile at the City College of New York. If you Google my name and profile and the word profile and City College of New York, you will find me. And there I am. You could see my whole curriculum vitae, but you might get bored because it's mostly academic. But I do have a couple of other achievements in photography. So it's somewhere in that
photography
CV.
too. I did not know that you were a photographer as well.
Yeah, kind of an
Aren't you
amateur photographer.
Full of surprises?
Yeah, I got a picture into an Appalachian
like a
Mountain Club
pinata.
calendar.
You hit you and then things come out.
Yeah.
All right. We are very happy to have had Irvin Schonfeld, Sam Schonfeld, I'm sorry. And you can check out his books, Snakes at a, and I will get this wrong for the rest of my life, Snakes as a Mahjong game?
A Mahjong game. Yes, it'll be in the anthology, and it's also on YouTube.
Fantastic. So thank you very much for spending this wonderful afternoon with us. It was a beautiful pleasure for us all.
Nice talking to you. Have a great day.
You too. Bye-bye.